Brought to you by and sponsored by Pull Caffe Wood Roasted Coffee, www.pullcaffe.com. Long before it became a global commodity, the Kaffa Arabica plant grew wild in the high, shaded forests of southwestern Ethiopia, particularly around the Kaffa region. Genetic research reveals that Arabica emerged over 600,000 years ago through a natural hybridization of two older coffee species, Kaffa canephora and Kaffa eugenioides. This ancient evolutionary history left the region's forests with an extraordinary pool of wild genetic diversity. Long before anyone brewed a hot drink, local communities harvested the bright red cherries, chewing them raw or mixing them with animal fat for energy. Archaeological excavations in northern Ethiopia have uncovered pottery shards with chemical traces of caffeine, dating back to approximately 260 Common Era, representing some of the earliest physical evidence of coffee use. Today, this ancestral relationship survives in the daily communal ritual of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony. Practitioners gather to roast green beans over a charcoal burner, grind them by hand, and brew the coffee in a clay pot known as a jabina. Served in three distinct successive rounds, often named abul, tona, and baraka, this ritual is the social foundation of Ethiopian life, offered to welcome guests, mark family milestones, and foster community connection. The coffee plant crossed the Red Sea into the rugged highlands of Yemen, transitioning from wild forest harvesting to systematic cultivation. By the 15th century, Yemeni farmers were planting coffee trees on the steep, terraced mountain slopes of the Hiraz region, establishing the earliest organized agricultural practices for the crop. Within these mountainous enclaves, Sufi monastic networks adopted the prepared beverage, calling it Qahwa. The stimulating drink became integral to their spiritual lives, sustaining scholars and mystics through long nighttime devotions, prayers, and theological studies. Unlike the gatherers of the African forests, Yemeni communities cultivated specific fields, domesticating land races that would eventually provide the genetic stock for the world's future Arabica varieties. As trade networks grew, the harvested beans descended from the mountain terraces to the bustling Red Sea port of Mocha. The harbor became so famous for exporting these precious seeds that its name entered the global lexicon, permanently associating the port with the beverage itself. From these quiet mountain slopes, the cultivated brew was poised to enter the busy streets of Islamic city life. By the early 16th century, the beverage spread rapidly from Yemen into Mecca, Cairo, and Damascus. New spaces soon opened in major Ottoman cities for public gatherings and conversation. In Istanbul, a merchant named Hakam established the city's first documented coffeehouse in 1551, and another merchant named Sems opened a second venue in 1554. These businesses became lively community hubs where patrons gathered to trade news, discuss public affairs, play games, and listen to music. In the 1640s, traveler Evliya Çelebi counted roughly 200 coffeehouses and 300 coffee servers in the imperial capital. This rapid rise attracted immediate legal and political scrutiny. Religious leaders debated the morality of the stimulating drink, while political authorities feared the gossip of unrestrained crowds. In 1633, Sultan Murad IV ordered all coffeehouses demolished under threat of execution, though the popular social habit proved too resilient to be permanently suppressed. Mediterranean merchants carried roasted beans into European ports, turning coffee from an exotic curiosity into a tool of practical business. In 1591, botanist Prospero Alpini published the first European description of the coffee plant, offering the continent its earliest scientific look at the crop. By 1652, this botanical interest shifted to commerce when Pasqua Rosé opened London's first coffeehouse in St. Michael's Alley, establishing a physical space for trade talk. Soon, similar venues appeared in Oxford, earning the nickname penny universities because a single penny bought a cup of coffee and hours of access to pamphlets, news, and academic debate. The connection between coffee and commercial intelligence reached its peak in 1686 when Edward Lloyd opened his London coffeehouse. Lloyd served as a dedicated maritime information exchange where ship owners, merchants, and insurers gathered to trade shipping data and underwrite global voyages. These practical networks turned coffeehouses into the information hubs of early capitalism, quietly driving the global demand for the crop to an unprecedented scale. The expanding appetite of European cities quickly strained the limits of casual trade. To satisfy thousands of daily patrons, coffee had to shift from a local specialty into a highly coordinated, global resource. This pressure drove a fundamental division of labor, where the cultivation of the green bean, its commercial roasting, and its final consumption became separated by vast oceans. Coffee, once a freshly prepared local drink, became an international commodity moving through standardized supply networks that demanded long-distance coordination. This drive for massive volume created an industrialized market, leaving only a rare few to preserve the traditional hands-on craft of wood-fired roasting. In Yakult, Washington, Pull Caffe operates a living link to this historic craft. The company roasts its coffee using a massive brick-lined Probat machine built around 1896. Rescued from a Serbian barn, the cast-iron roaster was examined by factory engineers who identified it as the oldest operating Probat in the world today. Without digital sensors, this machine relies entirely on the experienced eye and hand of a master roaster who feeds seasoned alder, cherry, and maple wood directly into the furnace. The wood fire slowly roasts the beans, imparting a subtle, natural sweetness and a delicate hint of smoke. Sealed inside a classic 2-pound steel can, this coffee preserves the raw character of late 19th century wood-fired roasting. Anyone wishing to taste this active piece of historical craftsmanship can order a can online at www.pullcaffe.com. During the 17th and 18th centuries, European colonial powers began transplanting coffee seedlings across the Atlantic, carrying them into the fertile soils of the Caribbean and Latin America. This territorial transfer shifted coffee from a rare luxury into a massive global commodity, reorganizing vast territories purely for export. Instead of supplying local markets, these newly established plantations operated as specialized production zones designed to satisfy the insatiable demand of overseas consumers. This budding transatlantic trade relied on a highly coordinated network of maritime shipping routes, urban merchants, and financial backers in London, Amsterdam, and Paris who funded these high-risk agricultural ventures. But the immense wealth generated by this agricultural expansion came at a profound human cost. Depending on the region and period, colonial empires built their coffee economies on the backs of coerced, indentured, and enslaved laborers. On the steep slopes of Caribbean islands like Martinique and Jamaica, and later across the rolling hills of South America, thousands of workers endured brutal conditions under constant surveillance to clear dense forests, plant crops, and harvest the cherries by hand. As South American producers began their rise toward dominating the global supply, the sheer volume of beans flooding across the oceans transformed international commerce. This massive, unprecedented influx of raw green coffee created a new logistical challenge on the receiving end. To turn these millions of pounds of imported beans into a uniform, daily beverage, industrializing markets needed a way to process, roast, and finish the crop with unprecedented consistency. Before this industrial shift, coffee roasting was a localized, highly variable task. Merchants and families relied on simple iron pans, open fires, or small hand-cranked shop drums, which frequently scorched the beans and produced unpredictable flavors. The turning point arrived with the rise of mechanized engineering. In October 1864, inventor Jabez secured United States patent number 44,704 for a double-walled, cylindrical roaster that could discharge roasted beans without being removed from the heat source. This breakthrough, along with emerging European designs from manufacturers like G.W. Barth, replaced open-flame guesswork with systematic control. These mechanical systems managed heat, drum agitation, batch size, and rapid cooling with industrial precision. Uniform tumbling prevented scorching, ensuring that entire shipments of green beans developed identical flavor profiles. This consistent quality allowed companies to package, ship, and market coffee under distinct brand names, transforming a volatile, raw agricultural product into a dependable grocery staple. By the turn of the century, coffee had evolved from a freshly roasted neighborhood specialty into a mass-manufactured household necessity. While this industrialization made a warm cup of coffee accessible to millions of households, it also lengthened the distance between daily consumers and the tropical soils where the beans were originally grown, separating the sensory experience of the beverage from the realities of its production. For decades, the standard grocery store tin hid the path of the bean. But a quiet revolution in the late 20th century began to peel back the label, shifting coffee from a generic commodity into a highly specific agricultural product. This movement, known as specialty coffee, aims to make the entire path of the bean completely transparent. Today, a bag of coffee often carries the name of a specific mountain valley, a single farm, or even the individual producer who harvested the crop. The flavor of the final cup is shaped long before the beans reach a roaster, starting with how the fresh cherry is processed. In the washed method, farmers remove the fruit pulp before drying the seeds, yielding a clean, bright cup with high acidity. The natural process, by contrast, leaves the cherry completely intact during drying, allowing the seeds to absorb the fruit's natural sugars and develop rich, berry-like flavors. The honey process sits in the middle, removing the outer skin but leaving a sticky layer of sweet mucilage on the bean during drying, producing a balanced body and mild sweetness. To secure these distinct profiles, roasters increasingly establish direct trade relationships with farmers. This practice bypasses traditional multi-layered supply chains, sending more income directly to growers while giving roasters precise details about growing conditions. It also addresses severe modern challenges. According to reports from the International Coffee Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization, rising global temperatures and shifting weather patterns threaten more than half of the world's current coffee-growing land. To protect long-term cultivation and farm income, specialty producers are focusing on biodiversity and agroforestry, planting shade trees that protect soil health and wild species. Modern cafes have inherited the social role of the historic coffeehouses, acting as community spaces where people pause to appreciate the complexity of their brew. From adjusting grind size and water temperature to choosing a specific roast profile, every variable is carefully managed to honor the hard work of the farmer. In this environment of careful preparation, traditional handcrafted techniques regain their value. By slowing down to focus on origin and technique, modern coffee culture turns a simple daily habit into an active appreciation of global craftsmanship. Today, every cup we pour connects us to a fragile global ecosystem and centuries of quiet craftsmanship. As climate change threatens the lands that sustain these beans, our daily ritual becomes a choice to protect the hands that cultivate them. The question is no longer just how we brew, but what we choose to preserve. Subscribe for more untold stories of human craft.